Good morning and welcome to the Computer Channel. Today's Dossier programme is the second of our two programmes for this year in the IT management series. We'll look at educating top management in the use of IT, show you how to evaluate IT staff and measure internal productivity, and finally look at how you should recruit and motivate IT professionals. My guests today are at the sharp end of the whole process. David Butler is chairman of Butler Cox and a specialist in IT management at the highest level. David is looking at how to sell the idea of IT to senior managers through education and marketing. David Andrews is head of the Integration Services Division at Anderson Consulting. David will look at the process of staff evaluation and show how you can measure internal productivity using Arthur Anderson as a case study. My final guest is Carol Beach, a familiar face on Thursday's analysis programme. Carol is head of member services at the British Computer Society and today looks at how to get around the skills shortage with a mix of motivation and training. But first, David Butler. Well, 14 years ago, with his colleague George Cox, David broke away from the American Diebold Group to form his own management consultancy, Butler Cox. He's a former vice president of the British Computer Society and a member of the Roskill Committee, which looked into a number of criminal fraud trials. He also writes and lectures on a range of IT-related subjects. David.
The technical progress made by information technology years since I joined the industry is amazing. The desktop machine on which I composed these words is more powerful than the first machine I worked on. But that machine had to be hoisted into its building with a crane. Even the processor was too large to fit in the lift. At the same time, information technology budgets have risen greatly. IT expenditure is now a significant item of corporate investment. But despite all this progress, there's a nagging feeling that in many organizations, information technology doesn't get the recognition it needs to do its work to its full potential. Why is it that in some firms, information technology is regarded as an appendage to the real business? Perhaps unavoidable, but essentially remote and alien from the rest of the team. Sometimes the budgets, though large, are funded with a grudging hand. The problem is one of a clash of cultures. In most successful firms, the management culture is action-oriented. It involves finding problems and fixing them. Information technology, in contrast, is widely seen as a contemplative business with wide horizons and long timescales. How can the culture gap be bridged? Today, I want to talk about two opportunities to close the gap. The first opportunity is to educate managers. And the second is to market the information technology function to its internal customers. Both are areas that we've studied in detail in Butler Cox. Our research shows that most in-house management training in information technology is at best a partial success. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that given management's ignorance of information technology, almost any education is better than none. The reverse is the truth. If you're lucky enough to get the whole board of directors to listen for a day, you need to think very carefully about what you tell them. Our research tells us that there are three key topics. The first is the strategic potential of information technology. It can be used to create new markets, to redefine trading relations, or even to generate new products. We've seen this in the financial services sector in recent years. The second is the organizational potential of information technology. Given databases and modern telecommunications, almost any organization structure is feasible. Very flat organizations, loose matrix organizations, the abolition of regional or functional layers, all of this is now possible. The third is the way top management should lead the IT function. Information technology's strategic priorities must always be couched in business terms. Only the board can do that. If they fail to do so, information technology remains a rudderless ship. Now, everyone agrees that these are the three main aims. But when information technology people actually get a chance to talk to their main boards, they actually talk about different topics. What heads the agenda are quite different themes, namely the use of information technology tools, the life cycle of a computer project, and the structure of IT costs. In truth, the information technology function chickens out. Faced with the tough, knowledgeable, and powerful people from the boardroom, it retreats to the things it knows best, to its own comfort zone. Our first message is not necessarily to equate education with formal classroom teaching. It may be that the best educational vehicle for top managers is the face-to-face meeting. But if the opportunity arises for an in-house seminar or presentation, the main thing is to think very carefully about your objectives. Most information technology departments settle for too little. They regard the avoidance of boredom as the limit of their ambitions. So they pepper the day with a couple of experienced outside speakers, a personable guy from a computer manufacturer, and one or two informative videos. If no one falls asleep or actually walks out of the room, the day is regarded as a success. The key question that remains unanswered is, so what? A golden opportunity has been squandered. Well, that's how to get it wrong. And here's some golden rules about getting it right. First, set up a project team to handle the event. Make a proper plan and a budget. This is an event that may shape your future. Treat it with the seriousness it deserves. Identify the objectives. When the participants leave the room, what do you hope will have changed? Amusing them is not enough. You need to plan, actually, at the individual level, director by director. What you can achieve with the marketing director may be quite different from what you can achieve with finance. Interview all the main players first. Find out what they think they need to know, but treat their responses as symptoms. Relate their needs to your future plans. How do you need to change their thinking to make your strategy a success? And treat the event as the start of a process. Where do we go from here? Get feedback and analyze it. What worked? Make sure the chief executive knows about the feedback. If you have any doubts about your ability to do all this, then hire a consulting firm or a business school to help. Education is a specialist task, not a business for well-meaning amateurs. But don't let them hijack the day. Make sure you are managing the project and the event. It's no use to you if your directors leave the meeting thinking that your advisors are great. All this costs money, both in management time and external fees. Running a proper education program for top managers is much more expensive than you think possible. If you haven't got the budget, don't do it. It's better to run no seminar than one which is just a lukewarm success. Now, this educational problem is part of a bigger difficulty. In many businesses, what do the information technology staff call their colleagues? They call them the users. And this term adequately indicates an entirely passive relationship. The people who buy a service and pay your wages should be known as customers or clients. Calling them users is symptomatic of a very wrong attitude, of the absence of a marketing policy. Many information technology departments don't even accept that they need a marketing policy in the first place. They regard marketing as something suspect that vendors try to perpetrate. In this, they're quite wrong. Modern marketing consists in analysing your customers' needs and planning and controlling your own business to meet those needs. In a moment, I want to talk about the practical difficulties of establishing a marketing policy for information technology. But first, the main problem, which refers back to what we were saying about the cultural gap. Systems people are just not naturally adapted to the marketing approach. They tend to be more technically oriented, less people-oriented. They deal in abstractions rather than in the psychological realities of selling. And lest you think I'm being unfair on information technology people, these views are theirs, not mine. That's the first barrier you have to overcome. Next, how to do it. Imagine that we are sitting around the table at the kick-off meeting of our marketing project. How will we start? The project will fall into 4 stages. In the first, we consider our customers and their needs. We'll do an attitude survey to find out what they really think of our services. We'll use a questionnaire and some simple statistical techniques such as scatter diagrams. Scatter diagrams reveal which services the customers think, for example, are very important and very badly provided. That's an area for improvement. From this analysis, we can produce a market segmentation, just as if we were marketing motor cars or ice creams. And this tells us how our customers break down into different groups, revealing special needs that all planners might have, or all managers above a certain level, or everyone in the Paris office. Next, we have to consider who meets these needs. Must the information technology department do everything that all its customers need? Or are there alternative suppliers to consider? Some information technology departments seem to think that it's a sign of failure to use an outside software house or facilities management. But why? The more perceptive information technology managers see themselves as brokers just as much as providers of service. The key task is the SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, which will tell us what we ourselves do supremely well and what we should encourage the customers to do for themselves or to buy elsewhere. Then you can advance to frame your own marketing plan to decide what services to offer and what will be the future role of the information technology function. Then you can deal with the specifics of the services, i.e. the pricing structure and the promotional policy. It takes about 6 months in an average company to complete such a cycle. Now, all of this is very familiar to marketing people, who are sometimes amazed that it's completely new to their colleagues in information technology. I actually find that encouraging. We're talking about importing into the information technology function tools of proven worth and practicality, rather than harebrained novelties. And if you need it, you'll often find your marketing colleagues are willing to help. Butler Cox's experience suggests that every information technology department can benefit from installing a proper marketing policy. It can transform the relations of the information technology staff with their customers, and finally, it can add relevance to everything the system staff attempt.
Thanks very much, David. Well, just to summarise a few of David's main points again. How to close the IT culture gap? Well, you educate managers, you market IT inside the company. How to seduce a board? Well, a very delicate affair, but tell them about the strategic potential of IT. Tell them about the organisational potential of IT and how top management can lead the IT movement. Don't equate training with formal classroom teaching. For top managers, the best vehicle is the face-to-face meeting. David Andrews, I can just sort of kick off the discussion with you in a way. Presumably the way companies approach IT is somewhere related to the way they sell their products anyway. Would you agree with that? Or?
I think so in some respects, although many of the functions and professional aspects that you get in other areas of a business haven't really percolated through to IT. We talked just now about marketing. Another area might well be engineering. You can look at the IT function and I think liken that very much to a craft-based approach. And I think we've yet to see some of the more professionally based approaches coming in from the other functions to influence IT.
How long do you think it'll be, David, before the IT side of the company really adopts a far more pragmatic marketing approach to what it's doing?
Well, I think they're waking up to the need for this kind of approach in very many organisations now. I think a trend in that direction is the rule rather than the exception. But you make an interesting point. I use the term marketing. It's not always wise to refer to what the systems department is trying to do as marketing. For example, in one German company that we studied, they don't have a marketing department because the culture is that their motor car is so good that it sells itself. Now, under those circumstances, it'd be crazy for the systems department to talk about marketing. So they talk about improved relations with the customers, better service and things like that. So you have to choose your terminology carefully. The aim is always the same, to analyse the customer's real needs and meet them better, and everybody's trying to do that.
Presumably it's that sort of approach that determines people's attitude to recruiting the right sort of person, Carol.
It certainly does, yes. I was interested to hear some of the points you were making about what qualities managers should have, such as being articulate and promoting things. And you also stated that some of the technical people did not have as yet those qualities, and this is what you were trying to bring over.
Yes,
and I think that's
right.
a very, very important point to make.
Yes, I think that the first step you have to get them to take is to understand that marketing is not a confidence trick. It's something you're doing for other people, not to them. But our experience also suggests that however remote from the mainstream of marketing systems people may be, once you persuade them of its value and importance, they really throw themselves headlong into it and become more Catholic than the Pope and really think of everything from a marketing point of view. They get a little bit of marketing mania, I think.
Go along with it in a great way, yes.
Yes, they do. They seem to do everything by either 0 or 100%.
I think that's IT people.
Yes.
Presumably there are a lot of political pressures, David, in sort of getting the two together and getting different approaches through. What sort of political problems do people come up against in looking at IT and the marketing side of it, really?
I think one of the main problems is really transferring their approach to IT from that of managing resources to providing a service. And it's that mental switch that they have to make. And that is very, very difficult for IT people to accept. We like the bits and bytes. We like being down at that detailed level. We love managing resources. And the idea that we're providing a service and how we present that service to the users, I think is something that is politically quite difficult for an IT department to come to terms with, as well as the community that the IT department's serving.
Okay, well, we're going to learn more about now how Arthur Anderson approaches that particular area in my second presentation. Well, David Andrews is now a partner and head of the Integration Services Division at Anderson Consulting. Today, he looks at staff evaluation and the quite extensive system of career development he's set up inside Anderson itself. David.
All too often, you know, you find the people factor is hidden behind the razzmatazz of technology. I'm not really sure why. Maybe the chips, the graphics, the gizmos, all the clever technical bells and whistles come across as sexier than real people. And if so, I think that's a pity, because the raw truth is that people in technology matter very much. People make technology work for business. People harness the commercial potential of costly hardware and software. It's people alone who can give wisdom to machines. Yet people are so often the forgotten link. To create a successful business for the 90s, chief executives must get 4 key components working in harmony: technology, strategy, operations, and perhaps most important of all, people. If any one of these elements is missing from the mix, the bottom line performance is sure to suffer. It can be regarded as a process of synchronization, which is becoming more and more important to success. This is because businesses are organic. You tinker with one area, and more often than not, you upset another. Attempting to address one area in isolation can create imbalances and friction, or worse, missed opportunities. Productivity is a classic case in point. It's an area that often suffers from isolated and ill-conceived tampering of top management. While competitiveness in the 90s will be achieved through the ability to synchronize these 4 components, business solutions will always be delivered by people. And every manager knows that a solution is only as good as the people behind it. So today I'd like to focus on this often overlooked component. When you're talking about people in the IT context, you have to remember that you have 2 sets of people, and 2 sets whose interests don't directly coincide. The first set is made up of the people outside the IT department, the users as we call them. The second set is obviously the IT professionals themselves. In most companies there's a gap between these 2 camps, and it's only when this gap is closed that we will begin to see real and sustainable business advantage coming from IT. For the purposes of this programme, we'll concentrate on the needs of the IT professionals. One casual flick through the pages of the computer press will tell you that people are in big demand. Clearly in information technology, we are dealing with seriously talented individuals commanding some very serious incomes. They work in complex systems development and service delivery areas. They want to be trained hard and to be stretched to the absolute limits of their ability. They also expect to be managed and respected as valued professionals. Yet the surprising truth is that very little attempt has been made to meet these expectations or challenges. For example, no professional IT body has yet taken up this challenge and responded to this need. We live in hope. But the fact remains that so far the challenge has been left to the IT industry. And there the majority of the companies have responded by hosing the problem with bigger salaries and better benefits. And that is about as far as many companies think. It's highly surprising, therefore, that IT professionals are becoming known as the gold-collar workforce. And so, of course, all of us pay them well, some of us very well. A few employers, unfortunately very few, have bothered to invest time and energy as well as money to tackle the challenge effectively. But the results for those companies have undoubtedly been impressive. While I cannot speak for other companies, I can talk with some authority about my own organisation, because we at Anderson Consulting have squarely faced up to these challenges. We now have 20,000 highly trained information technology professionals operating throughout the world. Year after year, we invest well over 15% of our worldwide revenue in training, productivity measurement and performance assessment, an amount probably exceeding 400 million. But the amount is less important than what we do with it. How do we make this very large investment? I suppose in very simple terms, we've invested in 3 main areas of professional development. First, we've invested in creating a career development environment which harnesses the ambitions and enthusiasm of people, one that fosters a highly motivated culture. Second, we've mounted a program of training which provides a common framework of understanding throughout the world, a program which cuts across all linguistic and cultural divides, and one which keeps pace with all the leading technical edge developments. Finally, we've invested in common approaches and methodologies to complex solutions, to use an habitually understood set of tools and techniques in carrying out our work. It's really quite a simple philosophy, but it's central to our reputation for highly productive people delivering a high-quality product. The fact that we can and do install one new system every hour of every working day worldwide goes some way to justifying our claim that this approach, even if it's simple, is highly effective. Some months ago, the British Computer Society produced a study which introduced the concept of hybrid managers, people who blend strong information management skills with well-developed business expertise. Alan Kane of the Financial Times recently reported that the British Computer Society and the National Computer Centre are both putting their weight behind a campaign to create a minimum of 10,000 hybrids in the UK by 1995. While we didn't set out to create hybrids per se, the effective end product of our approach is just that. People who possess a strong grasp of strategic, commercial and technical issues, people who can deliver tangible, bottom-line business benefits. Essentially, if these three principles are applied in combination, then high-quality and highly productive solutions and services will be delivered. That's our experience, having followed this approach for over 35 years now in building and running computer systems. But beware, business success, as I said earlier, means not only getting the people part right, but then synchronizing it with the right business strategy and the right operational practices. On the people side, taking these three simple principles and making them a reality is not a trivial exercise. It's certainly not something that can be merely thrown at an overworked personnel department to crack. Let's look at the three areas in a little bit more detail to see what we've done to implement these principles and make them a practical reality. First, let's deal with career development. People want a route map. Some years ago, Anderson Consulting moved into the area of facilities management, or as we prefer to call it, systems management. This area called for a route map for managing people's career paths, ranging from the trainee computer operator level right up to the Director of Information Services level. At every level, there are zones of individual achievement. The learning zone is the first stage and involves people in a steep learning curve, mastering skills that are essential for job fulfillment and future promotion. The qualified zone is a level which acknowledges someone's competence in a certain job. In many respects, the qualified zone is the watershed point, where future ambitions are discussed in great detail. Someone may choose to pursue a management path. Well, of course, that option is open. But if he or she wants to continue as a technocrat, gaining ever higher levels of technical expertise and excellence, then that too is an open door. But how? Well, what we call the premium zone offers security and progressive salary increases to people who are content to do a technical job really well. What we've created is an environment that doesn't force people along a promotion path, but that path is always there. The options are readily available, but it's for the individual to seize them. If anyone wants to remain at a given level, that's perfectly acceptable, providing they meet our performance standards. And that's the one major proviso. We will accommodate anyone who performs well at a given level, but we can never tolerate an erosion of our standards, nor will we allow people to vegetate or stagnate, which would undermine the job pride and self-respect that underpins this perform or out culture. The second area is training. Once you've established the various performance levels, then you can begin to build a skills training matrix. This matrix directly relates the training to skills required for any given level. It also provides the skills needed for promotion to the next level. Our own training program involves a mix of mandatory programs together with elective courses which people choose for themselves. This mix of courses makes sure there is a common ground of technical knowledge and ways of doing things. This in turn allows everyone to work closely together in a team. What's more, these courses are not confined to purely technical subjects. We want to develop all-round hybrid professionals. So we offer marketing, financial management and communications training. We also provide other specialist courses. We believe that training is so mission-critical to our success that we dare not rely on others to train our people. It's carried out by our people at various levels who are actually doing the job they teach. That's why we've developed our own international training centre just outside Chicago. It runs 1,750 courses, receives 50,000 delegates through its doors every year, and accommodates about 1,300 people at any one time. A figure roughly equivalent to, say, the full-time undergraduate population of Bath University. But as we do all this training, our university has no faculty. The only permanent staff are the administrators. There's no dead academic hand here, and the courses can never be out of date. Here it may be worth asking, how much is your company investing in training of your IT professionals? Let me touch finally on the third point, providing people with a set of tools and techniques to carry out the work. That's really what pulls it all together. You can have highly motivated and highly trained people, but without the right tools, they can't be highly efficient. That's why we in the information technology industry have to create a professionally engineered approach which improves quality and productivity. In the area of systems development, we have created our own full life cycle case tool set called Foundation. And in the operations area, Cooperate is our operations engineering solution. But as you might expect, it's an expensive exercise. To date, the development costs exceed 200 million. But in terms of productivity, this investment has paid handsome dividends. Experience has proved that with the right tools, people's productivity can jump by 70%. At the end of the day, what we all need is IT professionals who provide high-quality solutions in a highly cost-effective and productive way. It's not just a question of introducing some productivity aids and performance measures. It's a fundamental shift to create a truly professional approach for handling the information technology people factor. Linking this with the other parts of the business. That's what delivers lasting quality and productivity.
Thank you, David. Well, just a few points from David's presentation again. The four key components for working harmony: technology, strategy, operations and people. And of course the greatest of these is people. Three main areas of professional development: creating the right environment, a common framework of understanding, a clearly understood set of tools and techniques. There are also, of course, the three zones of individual achievement: the learning zone, the qualified zone and the premium zone. Cal, if I can start with you, just take that last point on the premium zone. Awful lot of pressure now is being put on people to, as David said, perform or out. And you hear very little about looking after and giving an incentive to people who perhaps are happy where they are.
Yes.
Is this a sort of common problem that's not really being addressed?
It isn't being addressed, not enough, I think, really. I mean, there are certainly people who are what I would put them in the area of technical professional, and they should actually stay where they are and not be promoted to the business professional area, which all too frequently happens because of the a skills shortage, mainly in the business professional area. So I think there does need to be some encouragement for people to stay, as I say, where they should be, doing what they're best at. Not being promoted into an area which they perhaps don't enjoy and perhaps don't achieve so much.
How do you sell that concept, though, David, to people who perhaps think they're the high flyers of the company, yet are best suited to stop where they are? How do you sell the fact that they are best suited where they are and that their career development should be geared towards that one area, not going through as a high flyer in the company itself?
Well, I think it does require a fundamental shift in the way in which we think about promotion and career paths. And so often the route to success is seen as being a manager and aspiring to a management position. I think we take a different view on this. You clearly need people who can undertake management positions, and that's a great skill, and we have lots of incompetent management we ought not to have. What we would prefer to do, I think, is make sure that technical people stay in a position where they are best suited to perform very well indeed. And that requires giving the right incentives, both financial and training, but more than that, what you've got to give is those people's status in the organisation, that technology and technocrats is a highly valued role.
I guess put that over to David. What's your opinion on that?
Yes, I would agree with that. I mean, I think it's worth making the point that if you have a very good technical person, say a systems programmer or a database designer, and you move that person into a management job for which they're not qualified, you've actually shot yourself in the foot twice, because you've deprived yourself of a very good technical person and you've acquired a lousy manager. I think in many organisations, the culture that only managers count is actually a culture which is imposed by management itself. And once you stop imposing that culture and you say, yes, it is possible for a technical person to be highly valued and prized, and no, it is not a sign of failure or of incompetence that you don't want to be a manager. I think once you stop peddling that false line to people, they breathe a deep sigh of relief and get on with what they know in their hearts they're good at doing.
After all, at the end of the day, presumably it's a sort of human quality control procedure you're actually putting into practice.
And nobody wants to do a job which they know they can't do. It would just be daft if they did.
Well, let's move on to another fashionable area that we're looking at, a point you mentioned earlier on, David, hybrid management. I mean, what is a hybrid manager?
Well,
what sort of skill are we looking at? And
yes.
Is this a purely academic term, or is this does it make good commercial sense?
I'm actually going to risk alienating my two co-panelists here, because I think the term hybrid is a terrible one. I think it's a rather typical computer industry one. What it means in Greek is monstrous. The blending of two things that should be kept apart, leading to something like the Minotaur. I think that if what we're saying is we want managers who are real managers, but also understand the impact of the technology and what it can do for organisations, I'm 100% behind that. But I suspect that by inventing fancy names for things like that, we're actually setting our cause a little bit back, because it provokes suspicion in people's minds. To me, they're just managers, they're not hybrids.
David, have you got any hybrids in Anderson? What are they doing?
Well, we certainly haven't got any minotaurs. It's all Greek to me anyway. But I think I'm less cynical about these names than perhaps David is. I think you do need these terms just to get people focusing on new ways of doing things and to make it a bit exciting. What the hybrid manager, I think, is trying to do is say what we want is sitting on the opposite side of the desk, say, to the user, to the customer, is someone who is competent across a range of subject areas. So he understands the client's, the customer's business. At the same time, he can reflect those business requirements and understanding of business requirements to what the technical solution might be. And to having those two qualities bound into one person, the business aspect and the technical aspect, is really what hybrid is trying to put across.
All right, well, hopefully we'll raise this after Carol's done her presentation later on and talking about this hybrid approach to various members of staff. We have an interesting piece of film coming up, but first of all, a brief reminder to you watching the programme. I have with me in the studio three management experts, David Butler, David Andrews and Carol Beach. If you'd like to ask them any questions, then the number to ring is 081 681 5280. I'll repeat that for you, 081 681 5280. The phone lines are now open. Well, there are an estimated 160,000 IT-related jobs in London and the South East, centred around some 8,000 computer installations. Each year, several thousand people will be looking to move. Well, one opportunity to look for a new job is the biannual fair visit. This summer, some 60 firms took stands with an eye to recruiting in a wide range of grades.
We've got a number of positions we're looking for. They range from programmers to senior analyst programmers, operators and business analysts. We've just completed a major exercise of recruiting graduates, as this is the right time of year to recruit graduates, and we've just filled our vacancies there.
Are you finding it particularly hard in the current climate to find particularly well-qualified people for these jobs?
It's actually improved. Last year was far more difficult, but we have actually noticed it is becoming easier to recruit and there are more suitable people available.
Logic industry finds it very cost-effective to come to visit because we get quite a few high-qualified professional people at a low cost rather than recruitment agencies.
How's the response been so far?
Oh, today it's been marvellous. And the other years that we've come, we've done very well. 5 or 6 people we've got from visit.
So why do you think there are so many people coming to find jobs at the moment?
I think this year we found that there's a lot of people have been made redundant. And so we found that we were getting an older group of people this year, and quite a few of them.
Does that mean you can be much more selective about who you get and how much you pay?
Oh yes, very much so.
In general, we're always looking, but at the moment we have a big development project and we're looking for team leaders, programmers, designers, testers, just a whole range of technical staff. I mean, we've had a couple of trainees in, sort of 6 months to a year, and unfortunately we can't help those. But we've been impressed because there's been quite a good mid-range of people, i.e. not too senior, not too junior. The most difficult people to find, in fact, are those with perhaps 4 or 5 years experience, and we've got quite a few of those along. So, because of recession, obviously the most senior people go first, the most expensive people go first, and we don't really want that level of person. We want a couple of rungs below that. So no, I think that this type of event just attracts the mid-level people, which are the most scarce resource in the market.
Are you able to kind of lower the salaries that you're offering because of these number of people who are coming to you?
No, we don't do that. I mean, we pay a market rate, and you always have to be competitive in IT, and therefore, no, we're not lowering the salaries at all.
Our clients come here to find experienced computer people. They're not looking for trainees. Anyone with 12 to 18 months experience and above would gain admittance to visit. Anyone with less than that, we would provide them with an information pack on the clients that are here who have vacancies in those areas, but the people that would deal with those aren't here anyway.
Why come to a jobs exhibition like this?
We thought we'd give it a try. We came in March and we decided to come again in September to compare whether this was the best time of year, whether March was. And it's also a different approach to recruitment, an opportunity to talk to a whole range of people with no base commitment between the two of you. Just talk generally about what we have, what they're looking for, and it's a profile raising exercise.
Most of the people that come here would get between 3 and 6 people, depending on the level of people they're looking for. We've had people have as high as 12 or 18 recruits from an event. If you compare that to advertising or to agency placement fees, which are between 15 and 25% of someone's annual salary, if you look at the levels of salary around here today, you'll see they range from sort of 15 and 18,000 up to 35,000. Someone could be paying as much as £5,000 to place a person. Now, if they get 3 or 5 people out of this, that's an awful lot of saving on agency placement fees.
Doug Stewart there, head of the Visit 90 recruitment fair we visited recently. We'll be talking about that in a moment or two later on. Well, my final guest is Carol Beach. Carol is Head of Member Services at the British Computer Society and a former lecturer in computer science at Coventry Polytechnic. Carol is best known for her work with the Women in Technology campaign, but also moderates computer studies and IT courses for the Business and Technician Education Council. Carol.
We hear an awful lot these days about the IT skills shortage and the difficulty most employers are having in recruiting and retaining computer staff. Nearly every week there is an article in at least one of the major nationals about alternative resources, such as women, who, although are 50% of the population, only make up 10% of the IT workforce, and the over 50s, who for a very long time have been written off by the information technology employers. We also hear a lot about the fall in the number of 18-year-olds, or the demographic time bomb, as it is usually called. Just how severe and significant is this time bomb? In the UK, the number of 18-year-olds reached a peak in 1983. Since then, the number has been falling steadily, and by 1995 will be 32% lower. Despite rising after 1995, by the end of the century, it will still be 22% lower than it was in 1983. At the same time, the demand for skilled information technology staff is growing. By 1992, it is estimated that the growth in demand will vary from 10% in the DP management area to a massive 80% for network staff. Combine these two sets of figures together, and we have a skills shortage on a scale we have not encountered before. Interestingly, employers until quite recently have taken an almost blinkered view of the problem. The drop in the number of 18-year-olds has been known for at least 18 years, and the National Computing Centre have been forecasting the growth in demand since 1985. Note also that although these figures are UK-specific, the trend applies to the whole of Western Europe. So after 1992, we could be talking about a skills shortage throughout the European community. Before we look at some ways of overcoming the problem, unfortunately there are already some initiatives, both government-sponsored and employer-led. Let us look at the mechanics of the skills shortage. The skills shortage arises originally from new technology and a widening market. These factors lead to a high demand for skilled labour, which in turn leads to a high turnover with an increase in job hopping and poaching. Training budgets are then cut due to the high cost of training and fear of staff losses. And with less training, there is less available skilled labour. It is indeed a very vicious circle. So what can be done to break out of this circle? There really are two types of situation to consider. First of all, employers need to look at possible ways of keeping and motivating staff. Currently, the average length of employment with one employer is 2 years, and the turnover is higher for more junior staff. That represents a large investment, even if only recruiting costs are taken into account. If even minimal training is done, the investment is much higher. Now, it may seem a paradox that what I'm going to suggest as a means of overcoming this high turnover is actually more training, but training with a difference. Not just some ad hoc training thought up on the spur of the moment, or training in response to, can I go on a C course type of request, but structured training. Training which enables both employer and employee to look at a career development in the long term, and with agreement on both sides, produce a career development plan. How does one go about producing such a career development plan? To start with, one needs a structure model. The British Computer Society produces a structure model for use with its professional development scheme, and I'm going to use that model to show you some specific examples. The model has been designed, and here I quote, to provide a set of guidelines that will assist both employers and employees to define training needs and also to create career development structures for all types of information technology staff. The model is divided into 7 streams or work areas: consultancy, development, operation, quality assurance, data management, education and training, and user support. Most of these streams also contain subdivisions which reflect the differing career opportunities within them. The model has 10 levels representing ascending levels of experience and responsibility. Being IT, it starts at level 0 for the trainee level and rises to level 9 for senior management. These streams and levels produce a matrix-type model with a cell for each level and stream. For each cell, the model provides details of academic background, experience and level of skill at entry, tasks to be carried out, and training and development required on the job. For example, one of the training requirements, and there are 5 altogether, for a trainee analyst is to have an introductory understanding of data management techniques and communication technology. Now I ask you, imagine the effect of discussing and agreeing such a scheme with a new employee. Provided you keep to it, within reason of course, you should find your staff staying with you longer than the norm in IT. Yes, of course it will cost money to implement, but think of the saving in recruitment and also the advantages of having a level of continuity among your staff. We started this talk by looking at the skills shortage, and we've been discussing training methods to help motivate staff to stay rather than to job hop. This in itself will not, of course, overcome the skills shortage. You might find yourself attracting a higher proportion of graduates, but the increase will almost certainly not be significant. So something else needs to be done. And here I want to get on a hobby horse of mine, namely women. Women make up 50% of the population, but only 10% of the information technology workforce. So, for the second part of this talk, I want to look at some of the initiatives being taken to attract more women into information technology, and to look at some of the actions employers can take. For this, I am going to use the results of a survey carried out by the British Computer Society. It was a survey of female members only, and it was designed to find out where the women in information technology are actually working and what attracts them to these employers. The analysis of employer types showed quite clearly that women in IT prefer to work in the private sector, although there was no particular preference between suppliers and users. What made women work for these employers? And were there any particular options and facilities being offered? Again, the survey came out with some very clear and positive results. Over 60% had an equal opportunities policy which worked. 53% offered their employees flexible working hours. Nearly 50% were able to work part-time. Now, all those options are likely to assist with domestic arrangements and complement family life. So if you want to attract more women into your workforce, these are the factors to consider. What were these women doing? Was any particular type of information technology work best suited to women? Now, although committed 100% to equality, I do appreciate there are differences between men and women in their approach and attitude to work. Many of these differences are due to social brainwashing, but nevertheless they should not be ignored. For example, women in general are better communicators, have much better interpersonal skills, and can work as part of a team more easily than their male counterparts. So it was hardly surprising that the survey showed over 30% working in a managerial capacity. I suspect at this stage you might be saying, well, that's all very well. I now know what to do, what facilities to provide, but where are these women coming from? Let me leave you with a few ideas, some of which may be thought-provoking. If we regard the information technology job scene on a graph with two axes, ranging from technical business in one direction and routine to profession in the other. Traditionally, graduate recruitment has been into the technical professional area, with non-graduates going into the more routine but still technical area. The growth in demand is forecast to be in the business professional area, and already there has been some movement from the technical professional to the business professional. I put it to you that this is the area where you should be attracting and placing your female staff, leaving your technical professional staff where they should be. There are three sources for your recruitment here. The non-technical graduates whose communication skills are likely to be better than their technical graduates. The women returners who will bring a maturity to your workforce. And finally, the secretarial staff who are computer literate in word processing and database management. All right, you might lose a good secretary, but you will probably gain an excellent business analyst. This talk has covered two not unrelated areas, namely motivation and recruitment of IT staff. The skills shortage is with us now, and unless it is addressed, could lead to a drop in standards in the information technology industry. You, the employers, are excellently placed to see this does not happen, and you will do this by looking at your sources of recruitment and the training you provide. To summarise a few of the points, do provide structured training for your staff. Having agreed a career development plan, stick with it as far as possible. Do provide options for your staff which assist with domestic arrangements. And finally, do look to other areas for possible career development into information technology. In this way, you will recruit and motivate professional information technology staff.
Thanks very much, Carol. Well, obviously, Carol provided quite a good summary there, but just a few other main points as well. The causes of the skills shortage, very much new technology, widening market, a high demand for skilled labour, job hopping and poaching. And of course, a possible solution is to motivate staff to stay, a higher standard of relevant training. Well, David, if I can still start with you, obviously there is going to be a skills shortage of some sort. Obviously, Carol's highlighted that it's going to be quite a serious one in the next couple of years, more so than I thought anyway. What incentives do companies need to be able to sort of cast our mind into alternative areas of employment? I mean, we're not just talking about women, we're talking about disabled people, older people who may have left employment, who are top managers in their own right, but may have retired early.
Yes.
Do there need to be formal incentives to get them in?
Well, I think that, funnily enough, in some ways I rather welcome the staff shortages which one is seeing now. Because I think while there were plenty of young, male, white candidates coming onto the marketplace, companies could afford to take this rather supercilious attitude towards women, towards older people who want to return from work perhaps after having family, towards disabled people. You know, I know that running the British Computer Society's disabled group has been a tough struggle to get people to listen and consider seriously. I think what the only real impetus is desperation. If they find they cannot get people in the markets in which they've been accustomed to recruiting, then they have to turn to other sources. And I think that's a good thing. I must admit, I'm very disappointed. When I first came into systems in the 1960s, I thought that by now, maybe 25-30% of all systems directors would be women. And it's very disappointing that that hasn't happened.
So, Carol, why hasn't it happened?
I think it hasn't happened because, as David has said, when there wasn't a shortage and you were male and the selection techniques favoured technically minded people and people weren't looking to the future. So it hasn't happened because there hasn't been the encouragement for women to go in. It's been a technically oriented world.
Isn't it? Obviously, there are social reasons why things haven't materialised, but surely don't people look at the best person for the job? If the skills are there, then they will take them regardless of colour, creed or whatever.
Oh yes, if the people are there. But I think one of the worrying things is that women haven't been going into IT at all from time of leaving school and considering career. I mean, it's an interesting point that a male arts graduate is much more likely to go into IT than a female arts graduate, even though their qualifications might be identical. And that is just to some extent, the social brainwashing, the IT scene, the selection methods, the environment, the whole sort of scenario that the information technology industry presents.
I think we've got a call coming through in a moment or two, but whilst we're sort of jigging around in the technical background here, can I just have a quick chat to you very quickly, David, about what Arthur Anderson does in terms of recruiting new areas of tapping the job market is what they call it. I mean, what new areas you're looking at? Or
right, well, I think new areas, certainly over the last several years we've had a very heavy emphasis on women in Anderson's. And been looking at all aspects of that. Part of it has been getting the marketing right, David, because I think there is a big marketing job to be done out in the marketplace. Women just do not naturally seem to have a predisposition towards going into information technology, which I think is a great pity. The other aspects, of course, are making sure that there's all the sort of support that you need there as a woman going through your career, because if you are going to leave to have a family and going to come back to work, then there needs to be the creche there needs to be the nanny facilities, and all that sort of infrastructure we're now thinking about putting in place.
I was going to say, I mean, when we're talking about incentives, I mean, do people genuinely want to re-enter the workforce having left it originally? I mean, what makes them change their mind to re-enter it?
I don't think they're necessarily changing their mind. I think they do want to re-enter it, but again we run into a slight problem that there are many women who perhaps were in IT, say at a junior level, who have had a career break and want to go back in, but find themselves a little bit daunted by the speed with which the technology has changed, and again are wondering how to update themselves. And here again we look to the employers for providing facilities to enable them to update. I mean, obviously they will bring other skills into the workforce because they will have, running a home and family. They will have, project management at their fingertips, interpersonal skills, and a lot of other things.
Informal skills that you don't realise you have. But well, unfortunately, we haven't got time to take the call, I don't think. But anyway, we're going to have to move on. Thank you all very much for coming in today and discussing quite a highly complex subject. Well, next week's Dossier programme is the second in our series on open systems interconnection, when Ken Young will be in the chair. It can be seen next Tuesday morning at 9:30. If you haven't subscribed yet, then please call Nick Bancroft on 071 730 2222. I'll just repeat that for you, 071 730 2222. Well, I'll be back on Thursday morning at 9:30 with analysis. I hope you'll join me. Until then, it's goodbye from the Computer Channel. Goodbye.